Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're taking a really fascinating global legal journey to try and solve a massive structural injustice that's currently plaguing civil courts. Just imagine for a second spending years fighting this absolutely exhausting legal battle. You finally hear the judge rule in your favor, and you feel that immense relief of justice being served. But what happens when that victory turns out to be entirely hollow? Today we're going to analyze some groundbreaking research by Dr. Cheng-Ying Lin that tackles this exact nightmare scenario in Taiwan's legal system. And, as you'll see, we'll also look at how the United States and Japan have completely rewritten their own rules to fix it.
Okay, let's dive into this because this quote perfectly captures the absolute frustration of thousands of creditors. Put yourself in their shoes for a second. You hold a court judgment saying you are owed substantial compensation. You've won. But when you actually go to collect the money, the debtor basically just shrugs. Their bank accounts are mysteriously empty, their real estate has been quietly transferred, and their assets are literally nowhere to be found. The court totally agrees you deserve to be paid, but they can't actually help you get the money. To understand how we can actually fix this, here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the illusion of victory. Second, Taiwan's broken enforcement system. Third, the American legal hammer. Fourth, Japan's 2019 system upgrade. And finally, fixing Taiwan's broken system.
Section 1. The illusion of victory.
You know, the entire foundation of any civil justice system rests on one simple idea, that your rights can actually be enforced. But in practice, here is what often happens to a victorious creditor in Taiwan. Because a stubborn debtor can simply hide their wealth to evade compulsory enforcement, the courts end up completely paralyzed. So instead of facilitating the transfer of actual compensation, the system frequently just issues what's known as a debt certificate. It's essentially just a piece of paper acknowledging the debt exists, and that officially concludes the court procedure. You're handed the certificate instead of your money. It reduces the court's judgment to an empty promise, and it deeply, deeply damages public trust.
Section 2. Taiwan's broken enforcement system. So why exactly is this happening? Well, the root cause lies in the structural flaws of Taiwan's current Compulsory Enforcement Act, specifically Article 20. Right now, Taiwan's enforcement system is essentially a toothless tiger. First off, the burden is almost entirely on you, the creditor, to play detective. You have to actively hunt down the debtor's tax, property, and corporate records, which is incredibly difficult to do because of strict privacy laws. Second, if a debtor lies or flat out refuses to report their assets under Article 20, the penalties are incredibly weak, usually just a minor administrative fine or brief detention. And crucially, civil execution courts in Taiwan have no direct mechanism to bypass the debtor and force banks or tax agencies to hand over financial data. The whole system basically relies on a dishonest debtor suddenly deciding to be honest. Let's move to and see how this builds. Section 3. The American legal hammer.
When the United States legal system encounters a debtor trying to hide assets, they definitely don't ask politely. They bring down the hammer. The U.S. uses a really powerful concept called post-judgment discovery, which is established under Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 69. Now, in a lot of countries, discovery, the aggressive gathering of evidence, that only happens before a trial. But in the U.S., if you win a judgment and the debtor won't pay, the court allows you to pry that massive toolbox right back open. You can issue information subpoenas directly to third parties, demanding written answers about the debtor's wealth. Or you can drag the debtor back into court for under-oath depositions to heavily grill them on exactly where the money went.
And it actually gets even stronger when you look at the state level. Take New York's civil practice law and rules, for example. They use something called a turnover order. This is a direct court command that completely bypasses an uncooperative debtor. If the court knows a bank is holding the debtor's funds, the judge directly orders the bank to hand that money straight over to the creditor. The debtor's cooperation isn't just unnecessary in this case, it's completely irrelevant.
But the real reason the U.S. system works so well is the enforcement mechanism behind it. While Taiwan relies on weak administrative fines to punish people who hide assets, the U.S. brings out contempt of court. If you ignore a subpoena or lie about your assets in the U.S., you aren't just facing a little fine. You are facing civil and criminal jail time. The terrifying prospect of serving real time behind bars ensures that court orders are respected, effectively shattering the debtor's willingness to play games and hide their wealth.
Section 4. Japan's 2019 system upgrade. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that while the U.S. is a powerful example, Taiwan's legal framework is actually much closer to civil law countries like Japan, and we can learn a lot from the utter failure of Japan's old system.
Back in 2003, Japan introduced a property disclosure procedure, but because the penalty for ignoring it was a mere 300,000 yen administrative fine, debtors just treated it as a minor cost of doing business. By 2016, the system was practically a ghost town. Only 578 cases were filed nationwide, and a staggering 40% of debtors simply didn't even bother showing up to court. The system was completely broken.
So Japan realized that administrative fines simply do not work against malicious debtors. To fix it, in 2019, they enacted a massive overhaul of their Civil Execution Act. And the most critical change? They introduced real criminal risk. If a debtor today refuses to show up, refuses to swear an oath, or lies about their assets, they face up to 6 months in criminal jail and a 500,000 yen fine. By escalating the punishment to a full-blown criminal offense, Japan instantly forced debtors to actually take the procedure seriously.
But Japan didn't stop at criminal penalties. They also built this highly structured secret backdoor that allows courts to bypass the debtor entirely and get information straight from third parties. And this access is brilliantly tailored to balance privacy concerns. For real estate, you can check registries, but only after you've tried asking the debtor first. For sensitive salary information from municipalities, access is strictly limited to high-priority cases like alimony or personal injury. But for bank accounts, the 2019 law grants broad, direct access for creditors to query banks without needing any prior debtor disclosure. It's an incredibly smart, balanced way to track down liquid assets.
Section 5. Fixing Taiwan's broken system.
So, the crucial point is, how do we actually apply these global lessons? Drawing from both the US and Japanese models, Dr. Chang's research outlines a concrete 4-step blueprint to overhaul Taiwan's Compulsory Enforcement Act. Now, some critics in Taiwan might argue that using criminal penalties in a civil enforcement issue is just too extreme. But guess what? A precedent already exists in Taiwan. Under Article 149 of Taiwan's notary law, making a false statement regarding a certified private document is already punishable by up to 1 year in prison. So the legal framework in Taiwan already accepts that lying in a civil procedure can warrant criminal jail time. Upgrading the penalties for hiding assets isn't some radical leap, it's just a logical expansion of existing legal principles.
So here is the final blueprint to fix the system. Step 1. Adopt the US and Japanese approach by upgrading the penalties for refusing to report assets from weak administrative fines to actual, undeniable criminal sanctions. Step 2. Widen the net so any creditor with a valid judgment can trigger this process. Step 3. Implement Japan's third-party backdoor, allowing the court to demand data directly from banks, tax agencies, and land registries, completely bypassing the deceptive debtor. And finally, Step 4, shift the court's role from a passive observer to an active investigator, bringing third parties who actually have knowledge of the assets directly into the discovery process.
By blending the aggressive discovery hammer of the United States with the structured, privacy-balanced backdoor of Japan, Taiwan really has a clear path to ending the era of the hollow victory. Because ultimately, we have to ask ourselves, is a justice system truly just if its verdicts are impossible to enforce? A judgment shouldn't just be a piece of paper. It should be a guarantee. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this deep dive has given you a powerful new perspective on the mechanics of real, actionable justice. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you next time.